Someone found it by accident. God knows what they were looking for in the first place. The website address is a series of random letters and numbers, and of course, like all secret dark web addresses, it ended with a .onion. You need special software to find it. It's called Tor. There is no Google in the deep web, no browsing. You have to know what you went there for. But some people think of themselves as explorers, and try to find web addresses simply by typing random combinations of letters and numbers. Supposedly, that's how they found Jane Woodbridge 813. That's how the story goes anyways, but I don't believe it. But then, I don't know how anyone else would have found it. The site itself is just a black screen with a video player at the center. The title of the video is written at the top of the screen. Nothing else is written anywhere. The video has no audio. I first saw it when I was 13, back in 2006. It stayed with me. It wasn't graphic, but still, I never forgot it. Which is why what's happening now has been keeping me up every night. It's like this nagging thing I've had in the back of my mind since I was a kid, and now it's at the forefront of my brain. It's all I think about. When I was 13, my best friend's older brother lived in their basement. Every now and then we would go down and try to get a turn at whatever PC game he was into at the time. One day we went down to find him reading a forum. We asked what game it was for, but he said it wasn't a game. It was for a video that had been going around. He hadn't seen it yet, but he heard rumors. He followed the instructions on the forum and found the site. It was locked with a username and password prompt. He read something he had handwritten on a piece of paper and typed it in. The prompt disappeared, and then there it was. Empty, save for the video player. He said I have to close the door before he could show it to us. I did. He pressed play. The video was shot from inside a house looking out through the old window to the backyard. In the middle of the yard was a girl. She was a teenager, but I couldn't tell exactly how old, maybe 16 or 17. She was leashed. It was wrapped around her neck, a chain running down to a pole on the ground so she couldn't move very far. At the moment the video started, she was standing awkwardly and looking at the cameraman, as if waiting for something. Beer cans were strewn all across the yard, and as I mentioned before, no audio. The camera jolted right. At the same time, the girl looked in the same direction. The camera couldn't see anything past a few feet ahead of the girl since it was being recorded indoors. But the girl could see it. Whatever it was that made them both look, it was ahead of her. She began to cry. She pulled at the chain and the pole, but they wouldn't move. She turned to the camera person, her cheeks red and wet with tears. She begged. The cameraman's hand popped up in front of the lens. He pointed an index finger straight down. The girl seemed to understand the gesture. She still cried, but now she closed her eyes, and one leg at a time got down on her knees. Then she bowed, her entire body bending until her face was down on the grass. Her hands stretched out in front of her. She turned them palm up and raised them as if she was worshipping. The video ends there. My friend said it was lame and called me out to play. His brother was interested. He remained for days trying to find answers, but there were none. I wasn't sure what to think. And then, as time wore on, there would be nights just before I fell asleep that I would see her there, kneeling on the grass. I needed to know what was standing in front of her at that moment. More than anything, I needed to know what she saw. Once, a year or two later, when we were sitting at the back porch, my friend's brother joined us as he smoked a cigarette. I asked if he ever found out who the girl was or anything else about that video. He said no one knew the girl. He was talking about the entire online community. They had looked for every girl with that name they could find. Nothing ever came of it. But he did say one thing which was very strange. He said the brand of the beers that were all over the yard didn't exist. Not in America or any country. This was such a strange additive that, again, I couldn't stop thinking about it. And then when I was 16, in the winter of 2009, a small news story went viral. The story was of a girl who had gone missing after going out for a walk with her friends. Two of her friends said she had been acting strange days before her disappearance, as if she was afraid or something. They had been walking home from school one day, and she just ran without warning. They couldn't catch up, and no one could find her after that. Her own parents confirmed that the two girls had told them of their daughter's behavior, telling the police she had recently developed a fear of mirrors. Her name was Jane Woodbridge. She was 17. Reddit and 4chan exploded with the news of it. Jane's photo was quickly released to the public, and yes, it was her, the girl from the video. But no one could believe it was true. The video had been released years prior to her kidnapping. The mystery only grew when photos of Jane as a 14-year-old girl were used for the 60 Minutes interview with her parents. They showed a much younger, much shorter, acne-ridden girl with chubby cheeks and big glasses. She did not at all resemble the Jane in the video. Some months later, Jane's body was found in the woods where she had run from her friends and gone missing. The spot had been searched thoroughly by police and volunteers. The police and family did not disclose a cause of death, but they did say it did not look like a homicide. Between the day the video appeared online and the day she went missing, it had been 813 days exactly. After Jane's body was found, the Deep website, which had been locked again with a new username and password for 6 months or so after Jane went missing, was finally cracked. Some months later, Jane's body was found in the woods where she had run from her friends and gone missing. The spot had been searched thoroughly by police and volunteers. The police and family did not disclose a cause of death, but they did say it did not look like a homicide. Between the day the video appeared online and the day she went missing, it had been 813 days exactly. After Jane's body was found, the Deep website, which had been locked again with a new username and password for 6 months or so after Jane went missing, was finally cracked. The video had changed. The inscription read Emily Forster, 12. The video began by showing Emily walking with her friends along her street. It is handheld, the camera person hidden and far from the kids. Emily's arms are crossed in front of her and her head is down. She suddenly runs, crossing into the woods. Her friends give chase. The camera person moves forward toward the woods. The video cuts to minutes later. The camera person hides as Emily's friends exit the woods, unable to find her. 4chan, Reddit, and other social media sites began the search for Emily Forster. For the first day of the search, the name was even trending on Twitter. 12 days after the video was posted, 16-year-old Emily Forster was reported missing after she did not come home from her job in Creede, Colorado. This was nowhere near where Jane lived. Her friends told police she ran while coming home. She had been quiet all day, scared of something, but she wouldn't say what. 6 days after she went missing, her body was found hanged in the woods 5 miles from her home. A second video was uploaded to the site that same day. I didn't know if I wanted to watch it. I remembered being awake those nights, just burning with curiosity and terror, needing to know what it was, what Jane had seen. As I paced my living room, trying to push myself to ignore it, I knew I would watch it, and a few minutes later, I did just that. Emily 12 Part 2 starts with a gritty video of a party. The camera moves among the older men and women, who smile and wave as they drink. The first thing I note, aside from the crappy quality of the video, is the attire. Men have big glasses, women have their hair sprayed stiff and curled, like something from the 70s, except it couldn't have been because as the camera reaches the kitchen window, we see her there. Emily Forster, taken in 2019 and chained to a pole. It is night, but there is a floodlight outside, and the identity of the girl is unmistakable. Emily stands and cries in the backyard. The cameraman raises his beer, the same beer as that which littered the yard in the previous video, as if giving her a toast. Emily is suddenly alert. She looks back to the dark behind her, listening. The man once again points to the ground, but Emily refuses to kneel. He tries 2 more times, but she stomps her foot in defiance. She turns to the black behind her, as if she heard something, and starts to scream. The cameraman turns back to the house. Everyone now has their back turned to the camera, all facing away from Emily. They stand there, their backs to us, doing nothing else. The video ends. Once again, I realized the timeline didn't add up. The first video of Emily running away was posted months before it happened. Again, I felt sick. I decided I was done with it. I left the site and the computer. I put it out of my mind and decided I wouldn't dig anymore. I didn't care who was next. I was done. And then, a few months later, the site updated. It was all over Reddit. Everyone was talking about the diary. I couldn't help myself. I went back on. Instead of a video, there was a picture. It was the cover of a red diary. The label read, "This diary is the property of..." But the name had been scratched off. There was an arrow at the bottom. I clicked it and the picture changed the first 2 pages of the diary. The date read August 9th, but the year had also been scratched off. The first few pages were regular diary entries. It belonged to a girl in middle school, or at least it read that way. Then there was a really strange entry. Unlike the others, it wasn't about the boys in her class she had a crush on, or her friends who mostly liked her for her pool. This one was about her sister who had died a year earlier from anaphylactic shock. It read, "It's been 1 year today since Cindy died. My mom said if I can't talk about it, I should write about it, and I definitely can't talk about it. It was the worst night of my life. I can still feel the bunk bed shaking. I hear her choking, but the worst part, even worse than hearing my sister dying, is how I just lay there, listening, too afraid to do anything, until finally the shaking stopped. She had been bitten by a spider. It wasn't super venomous, but she was allergic. Mom got rid of the bunk beds, but when I wake up, I still see her arm sticking out above me. Then my eyes adjust, and I realize I'm just looking at the ceiling. One night, I woke up feeling like I was being watched. The feeling was so strong that I was more scared of turning on the light than I was of being in the dark. What if I see what's watching me? And then I noticed that the terrible feeling was all coming from one spot in my room. Not a dark corner where something might be hiding, but the stand-up mirror by my closet door. I got up and walked over to it, hoping that seeing it up close would lessen my fear a little. But I still hadn't turned the light on, so all I saw was my silhouette. Something was off. I couldn't tell what. I couldn't see my face, so I don't know what it could be. But the reflection in the mirror, something about it was off. I threw a sheet over to cover it up and went back to bed. The mirror was tall and the top curved, so when it stood under the sheet, it looked like a person just standing there in the corner of my room. The feeling that I was being watched never went away. Actually, it got much worse. I kept it covered for the next 2 weeks. It was only when I absolutely had to pull the sheet off that I finally did. It was really late one night when I heard someone tapping on the glass of my window. My room is on the 2nd floor, so I was really scared to see who it was. A million thoughts ran through my mind while I got up and walked to the window, like maybe it was a vampire or just red eyes in the dark. When I finally got to the window and pulled the curtain aside, I saw there was no one there. It wasn't until that moment I had realized the tapping was coming from behind me. It was coming from the mirror. I was shaking worse than ever. My mouth was dry, my legs weak, but I had to know what it was. I pulled the sheet down. The tapping stopped. Again, it was too dark to see my reflection, but that wasn't my focus anymore because now I looked past myself to the rest of the room, and I saw something I didn't recognize. There was a TV in the same spot as mine, except it was a totally different model, like it was from a long time ago. And my bed wasn't my bed. It was bunk beds, like we used to have. There was someone sleeping on the top bunk. I could see her shape under the blankets, but not much else. And as I stood there watching, the shape began to stir. She woke up. It looked like my sister, but wasn't. Even though she was mostly hidden in the dark of the room, I could tell it wasn't really her. She became really happy when she saw me. She rolled from the bunk to the ladder on the side, her arms and legs stiff like they had been after she died. She limped toward me. I turned from the mirror and saw my room as it really was. There was no one in the dark, but when I looked back into the mirror, I saw what she really was. That was the end of the entry. I turned the pages, and on each one there was only one sentence, the same sentence written over and over again, sometimes a dozen times, sometimes hundreds. It still haunts me. It haunts me to wonder about what she saw that night, and the nights that followed. The sentence that covered the rest of the diary was simply, "Don't look in the mirror."
I went on the dark web because I heard a lot of cool stories about it. I just couldn't resist. All of my friends were talking about it and I just had to go check it out. I saw some really creepy stuff on it, and I guess I was on stuff on the dark web that I shouldn't have been on. So I shut down my computer and resumed to my normal life. The next morning, I heard a loud knock on the door and what sounded like the police. So I go to the door and open it. The police are there. They ask me if my name is Henry, and I tell them yes. That's me. They then arrest me and take me to jail. I'm 18, so I just made the cut for the adult jail. I was told that I was getting arrested because of my activity on the dark web. My parents tried fighting it, but there was nothing that they could do. I was only in jail for a couple months, but still, I was so young and I was frightened. Every day, I felt like I was in danger and just wanted to go back home. The jail I was in was a small jail. I guess it was for the inmates that were in for minor crimes and who were supposed to be getting out within a couple of months. We had more freedom. We worked outside and wasn't treated as badly since we were only minor criminals. One day, we were sent outside to work, the 5 of us inmates with only 1 guard. Usually, there would be 2 guards, but the other guard for some reason couldn't make it. So, we were all working, and 2 of the inmates tackled the guard, and then the other 2 go help the inmates, and the guard is out cold. At this time, I only had 1 week before I was leaving, so I wasn't really trying to get in any trouble. The 4 inmates started to make a run for it while the guard was unconscious. In a split second, I ran with them. I knew I shouldn't have, but my mind ran wild and I just did it. Looking back, I probably should have just stayed, but then they could have blamed me and I could have got a longer sentence, so I decided to take my chances. I ran home and I see my laptop on the dark web page, and then I see my mom and dad. They asked me why I'm out early, and my dad smiled, and then they gave me a hug. After a couple of minutes of talking to them, the door slams open and it's the police. They tackle and arrest me. As I'm walking out, my dad apologizes for calling the cops and thanks me for taking the blame. As I'm on the way back to the jail, I put the pieces together. My dad has my laptop on the dark web website. He smiled and thanked me for taking the blame. I then realized that it was my dad who was doing the illegal things on the dark web using my laptop and not me. A couple months later, I go back home and there's nobody there. They packed up their things and moved. I don't know where they are to this day. I've never seen them again.
Tom was a very skilled hacker and could hack almost anything. He hacked various government organizations and the thrill was huge, but he wanted to go on to the next level. He used to work his way around the dark web like he owned the place, but what really made him stand up and take notice is the internet rumour of there being a Marina's Web. The Marina's Web got its name from the Marina Trench, which is the deepest part of the ocean. There was meant to be all sorts of huge secrets revealed in that deepest part of the dark web. He knew the difference between the deep and dark web. The deep web was mostly medical records and police records, etc. And the dark web was where all the bad stuff goes on, like hiring serial killers and human experiments against a person's will, etc. But in the Marina's Web, he heard the world's most top secrets are revealed, like the Vatican archives and the secret location of Atlantis. As exciting as all that sounded to him, it was a bigger and deeper agenda he had than access those secrets. He just had to know if it was real. He heard the rumour and didn't take much notice of it until one night he was eavesdropping on his dad and heard him speaking about an artificial intelligence that no one can tap into because there is a certain algorithm needed and it is impossible to find without a quantum computer. The thing is, his dad works in the government and he knows there is a quantum computer in the building. He just needs to find a way in. Through intensive research how to hack the building's security system, he found a way in. And once he was near the quantum computer, he knew he had a very limited time. He was disappointed that nothing was happening, just the usual dark web, until the screen went black, then green, and an angry-looking emoji popped up with writing, "Marina's Web, AI system accessed." He smiled with excitement and wondered what would he try to find using the AI and the algorithm. The secret location of Atlantis, the Vatican secrets. It all seemed exciting now that he knew that he was in the AI system. His face dropped when he saw what was on the screen. It said, "World War III activated. Earth will be destroyed in 10 seconds. Then the countdown began. Thanks for watching The Assassin Rapper, and if you enjoy the content then make sure to subscribe and hit the bell to be notified of new content.